Thank you so very much again for coming out today. And first and foremost, I always like to give honor to God, who's the head of our lives, for allowing us to be here and allowing us to have this here. We are going to have a fantastic day in our first mental health workshop since the pandemic. And first, I want to recognize some folks and recognize the host of this WC3. And first, I have to give recognition to Dr. Ivory for allowing us to come and always be a part of his WC3 campus, moving around. He always makes it available to us. Also, although he is not here, is Dr. Ahmed, who is the campus dean for the campus. He is not here. He had another. But I also want to recognize, Dr. McQueen, who is the executive dean of the campus. Dr. McQueen, come on up here and give us a few words, sir.
Good morning, everyone. I hope you can all hear me with this mask on, but sign of the times here. I'd like to welcome each and every one of you here on behalf of our visionary leader, Dr. Curtis L. Ivory. He makes all of this possible for all of us. And I'd like to ask that any of you who are considering any educational pursuits to please consider Wayne County Community College District in your future and for other family members and friends. On that, I will just say thank you for coming to the campus on this beautiful October sunny day. Thank you very much. Councilman, thank you very much.
Dr. McQueen, thank you so very much. And again, we really appreciate what you allowing us to be here for this. And please tell Dr. Ahmed and Dr. Ivory, of course, I will be getting hold of Dr. Ivory, but please tell him thank you so very much. Again, we're going to have some fantastic, but I do also want to recognize some other folks that are here. Dr. Zabigi, please stand up, doctor. He's always been very much involved with us. Thank you so much. Also, the person who always keeps it and puts it together, my mental health coordinator, Miss Susan Gardner. Susan Gardner. Also, I want to thank my staff for putting it together. They're all around. Most of them are running around in those red shirts, T-shirts, so I want to thank them. But mainly, I want to thank each and every one of you for taking time out. We know that COVID is here, but you're taking time out because mental health is such an important issue, especially with what we have went through with the COVID pandemic, as well as life. And that's what I say. Mental health is life, because it affects the way you think, the way you act. Something could happen. You could have a death in the family. You could have health issues. You could have financial issues. You could wake up, have a bad dream, and wake up. These are things that happens in life. It has no economic status. It is no cultural status. Mental health affects everyone because why? We all live every single day. And so I just want to thank you so very much for coming out, listening to. Please be involved. So we're going to have some great folks. Dr. and I'm calling him Doctor because he's about to get there. Dr. Andre Johnson. He's going to be here. Y'all turn around, but he's in front of y'all. You'll see him when he comes up. I'm just naming out some names now. He's in charge of the Detroit recovery. My friend, he has very much been involved, not only at this level, but whenever I call him, whenever someone calls our office to have someone that has a substance abuse, he is on the job. So you'll be meeting him. Also, we're going to have Courtney Coco Mathis. She's going to be coming down here, giving us some speaking engagements. Councilwoman, although she'll be running, Congresswoman, but Congresswoman Brenda Lawrence will be here. And she's going to give us some words. And I do want to say, Council President, we'll both have a funeral to attend, but Council President Brenda Jones will probably be here to have a few words for us. And then we're going to have Dr. Greg Neyman. He's going to be here, going to have some words about not only what he's doing, but what his organization is doing also. Then we're going to have a little lunch. We're going to have some breakout sessions. And then let me just read some names of some of the folks. Miss Aisha Cunningham is going to be one of the breakout sessions. Miss Cherie Ayers is going to be here. Miss Meg Watt is going to be here. Rahana Pitts, and then we're going to have some closing. But the person that is going to be here, and I just want to thank her so much, I call her my sister, because she is here and she has a plane to catch. But to show how important this event is and our relationship is, she is here today for the first half. And she's from Beaumont Hospital. Ladies and gentlemen, please give a welcome around to my friend, my sister, Simone Caucus.
Good morning, everybody. I am just honored and privileged to be here. Councilman McCalister is an outstanding person, and if I had to miss that plane today, I would miss it. I want to start by introducing, we have a great lineup, and I know we're all eager to get going. Andre Johnson, we've been in prevention and recovery for so many years together. We don't see each other that often anymore, but again, an outstanding individual in this field. I'm going to give you a little bit of a background on Andre. Andre is a native Detroiter, is currently the president, CEO of the Detroit Recovery, a multi-service agency that we work very closely with. If I refer, I always go to Detroit Recovery. I know that the job will get done and it will get done well. He has a wide spectrum of support services to the city's recovery community. Such services include the GED preparation, which is so important. We always forget that once we go into treatment, once we go into prevention, what do we have? We also have to do a continuum of services in life, balancing a checkbook, GED preparation. Getting somebody on the right track isn't enough. We need a continuum of services, and I'm happy to say Andre does that. The 12-step support groups, he has housing assistance, job readiness, and employment assistance. Also HIV prevention, which I'm sure many of you know is extremely on the rise, as well as Hep C, and counseling services. In addition, the agency also oversees an ex-offender program, which is an outstanding program. In 2013, Mr. Johnson was appointed by the U.S. Secretary of Health and Human Services to the SAMHSA Center for Substance Abuse Treatment. Mr. Johnson holds a Bachelor of Arts degree in psychology. He also holds a master's degree and is now working on his PhD. Are you making me go back to school? You're making me look bad. Mr. Johnson was a recipient of the prestigious Vernon Johnson Award from Faces and Voices of Recovery. In 2016, President Barack Obama named Mr. Johnson a champion of change and honored him at the White House. And I'm not going to wait any longer. I want this young man up here. So if we can put our hands together and introduce Andre.
Good morning, good morning. So good to see everybody here today. We all know this is a very, very important issue in our homes, in our communities, in our schools, in our workplaces, and we can never learn and get the necessary tools, enough tools that we need to properly combat mental health challenges in our community. First and foremost, I want to thank Councilmember Ray McCalister for inviting me to be a part of today's workshop. And it's important to me to communicate to you all, this is a critical issue. And so to have a city councilman make a commitment to address mental health is a huge endeavor. This is one of the least talked about things in our communities and in our homes. And so to have a councilman who has made a commitment to facilitate and host these conferences day in and day out, year in, year out. So last year we did it on Zoom. And so I'm honored to be a part of today's session. I'm honored to be a part of anything that Councilmember Ray McCalister commits to, because we're talking about a vulnerable population that needs treatment, needs professional help. And when they don't get it, the condition gets worse. I want to thank you for just, fantastic introduction, and thank you for just all the work you've been doing in our community and our collaborations over the years. But I can go very, very technical, or I can go very, very layman when it comes to this conversation, but I think it's going to be important for us, to have an interactive day so that I can address things that perhaps you may have some interest in, but in order for that to occur, I'm going to need some participation. So that means you all are going to tell me what you know, because we have various levels of education, experiences, and everything else in this room today. We got a nice, diverse team of people. But I want to know from y'all, you all, how or what mental health or illness means to you. And don't y'all be looking at me like we're in a funeral home, but y'all gonna get engaged. Yes. What's your name? Dr. Moore. Dr. Moore, thank you. You are a woman, and I can tell that. So I want to hear from some of these other folks too. Yeah. And what's your name? Justin. Justin says, keeping yourself emotionally stable. Very impressive. Very impressive. I want to see some hands from some folks who are not in the field, because I know a lot of y'all work in this field, and y'all just going to start preaching my sermon. It's still my thunder.
I just want to say mental health is of the utmost importance, because without a person's mind being healthy, everything else declines, whether it's physical health, whether it's their social well-being, and so forth. So self-care, things of that nature, making sure that a person is receiving services to receive what they need to maintain their mental health, it helps everything else to fall into place in their life.
What's your name?
Larry Martin with High
Where you working?
High Health in Livonia.
You got the folks in the field always studying the thunder.
Where you put that?
You snuck that in on me. I want to get some more from Justin. Okay, spiritual health. What's your name? Love it, love it, love it. Who else?
Oh, some people think that. Okay.
Yes.
So education is real and it's important so people understand the importance of mental health in the community of people of color.
Give that sister a hand. So, it's a lot. You see, yes, you.
Okay, thank you. Some people be suffering with mental health because they in a lot of pain. Some people is lonely. They need somebody to talk to them and help them through what they going through.
Okay, all right. Now y'all see, we all over the place here. And one interesting thing is nobody really talking about the actual diagnosis, which these are just some examples of very typical and general diagnosis when people show up in the office. And then you have the typical goals to help people to become what? More functional. Because some people there's different types of illnesses. But I appreciate what's been said thus far. Yeah.
I wanted to add Dr. Johnson, it's dementia.
Okay. Okay. Absolutely. What other mental illnesses are we missing? Who said narcissism? Don't be talking about me. No. Somebody said SUD, and what was the other? Substance use disorders? PTSD. Who? PTSD. Okay, PTSD. And what else? Okay. All right. So,
You can't do, can you grab the mic?
okay. Y'all get bossy after a while. I'm sorry, what'd you say? Family issues. Okay, perfect. Okay, I got it, yeah. So, all right, you guys, you all, family issues. I'm gonna circle that one because y'all know family issues. But, and let me just, yes, ma'am. Thank you for bringing that up.
What about disabilities that are genetically passed on?
Who was that? Who said that?
I did.
Doc. All right. All right. Y'all are
I feel
about
like
to put.
those are some of the harder ones because you can't really trigger or pinpoint where they're coming from. Some people have those issues and they're not even aware that it's something that their mothers had or their uncles and their grandmothers and their cousins, and they think that it's something that they've done to put themselves in that place when they don't understand that it was something that they were born into.
All right. Okay. What I'm going to do is I want to take a minute and talk about all the different areas of things that I wrote on the board to hopefully inform you all. So yes, mental illness is typically influenced by genetics, it's influenced by the environment, and it's also influenced by biological factors. And then obviously other factors influences mental illness and your behavior, which is school and your community at large. So I'm in school now. I'm in my third year out of 4 studying to be a clinical psychologist. And it's a major part of our training is to understand the mental illnesses. and how do we treat it. So, and typically there are the genetics, which is a predisposition. And so what that basically means is if your mother or father has bipolar, suicidal experiences while you were still an infant, or perhaps in the mother's, belly, you have a strong probability to actually be predisposed to a mental health illness. Now, versus me, if my parents didn't have it, you are more susceptible. And the things we look at are your environmental, social bias. That's why there's always this biopsychosocial done to understand who you are as an individual and understand where your challenges of your families. And it doesn't guarantee, it just suggests, the data suggests that you're more susceptible. And that's applicable. So when we, as a professional in our field, we talk about behavioral health services. And behavioral health services, what falls under the auspices is mental health and substance use disorder. And everything falls under all these mental health disorders, and then there's another set that falls under substance use disorders. So one important thing to really understand is, first of all, you need help. People need help, and people need treatment. People that you may know, whether it's loved ones, families, etc., is to get them professional help. I can't say that enough. And you have to be empathetic. You have to want to promote resiliency in these individuals and promote your own mental health being, because I've seen how loved ones are affected, and most of the times they're not really informed on what they're dealing with. And see, I grew up in an environment where you ain't dumb, you ain't stupid. Oh, I'm gonna treat you like you're dumb. I'm gonna treat you like you're stupid. And that language perpetuates the stigmatization of mental health illness. I grew up, and I don't know about y'all, oh, look at them on the short bus. But that's not a joke. They are human beings. They are our loved ones. And any human being deserves to be treated with dignity and respect first. First and foremost, we have to change our language. And we have to understand that some people do have physical health disabilities. And they have no control over that. They were born with that. People do have situations in life that affects their mental well-being, which can perhaps escalate into borderline personality disorder or escalate to bipolar disorders. And these disorders are typical disorders some therapists don't even like to deal with. Because you have to really be trained to really work with certain different type of populations. Autism, spectrum disorder, real big. Young kids, 6, 7 years old, schizophrenia, brains don't operate like everybody else's, so to speak. And we have to still educate them. We have to empower them so that they can become functional and productive based on their personal skill level. And it's like a lot of moving parts, a lot of moving wheels. I mean, Dr. Moore talked about Governor Engler, the political thing around closing Northfield down and how that impact our mental health, and a lot of folks who are homeless walking around on the streets of Detroit are often known as the frequent flyers in the county jail because they are mentally ill and they're not being treated, which means they're not getting the necessary help, and they often do things that can perhaps lead them in and out of the jail. And sometimes it's a good thing for them because they get to be able to get a good night's sleep and 3 hots in the car. And I say that very humbly. COVID-19, there's no way impossible. I mean, yeah, we're here living and breathing, but we haven't been unscathed. Why? Because we've lost loved ones. We know somebody, and there's a hurt, there's a sadness, and perhaps there's grief, and there's loss, and perhaps we wasn't able to even support them during that period of time, or loneliness, not being able to know that we had loved ones in the hospital and we couldn't support them, or elderly folks in our family we couldn't see and visit for 1 year or 2 years. That's grief and loss. Everybody, in most cases, experience something called depression. Everybody, in some form or fashion, experience anxiety. But how do you cope with that? What are your coping tools? What are your coping skills? And I think that's why you want to, what's your name again? You, Mama. Mm-hmm. All right. Okay, Aunt is teaching meditation after this. 3:23. You said 3:24 early. Changed. So I think it's important that we promote basic coping tools that's fairly inexpensive. It's just a practice to help calm the mind down. Have you ever experienced anxiety? Do you know how you begin to have racing thoughts that's uncontrollable? I think my first anxiety was when, me and my girl broke up in 1989. And I couldn't sleep all night. And I didn't know what was going on. And we had been cussing each other out for about 2 weeks. She had drove my truck. I had an old tracker. And she drove my truck. And I had went out of town for a week, and I came back, I had 15,000 miles on my truck. And I wasn't making sense to me. And I probably needed treatment after that because I couldn't sleep for about 2 days. I was cleaning I had a 50-gallon fish tank, and you don't know if you ever had experience cleaning your fish tank out, but taking the water and dumping it is a task. But I didn't know I was experiencing some anxiety and some separation anxiety because I had never really learned to understand my feelings. And I would always go and shift between anger and fear and get emotional. And then I was quick to say, I ain't have nothing to do with you. And then the next morning, I love you and I miss you. Y'all ain't never did that kind of stuff, have you? Y'all having a mental health episode if you haven't. And if you haven't dealt with it, just keep living. But now, in all seriously, though, I think my really first bout with anxiety was actually in high school. I was really terrified about going to high school, and back in the 80s, they were talking about Freshman Friday. And so I was really terrified. I wasn't trying to get beat up. But, and I didn't know how to deal with it. And I didn't have nobody teaching me that I had anxiety, and I didn't have any knowledge about it. And I made a lot of poor decisions behind not learning how to cope with it, not knowing the importance of therapy, not knowing the importance of a support system. And then I had that same experience 10 years later when I was in undergrad at Morehouse, where, I was failing. And sometimes if you're failing at something, that can cause some anxiety, right? And I remember going to my school psychologist, and they began to screen me and conduct these surveys and things like that. And it was I was found to have experienced some anxiety at that time. So I began to, seek therapy. And I got better. And I got through it. And I graduated on time. Because part of my anxiety was the fear of not graduating on time. So, it's important to me to really, try to give y'all some real life examples of what's going on out here, because the reality is Detroit has some of the highest health disparities, some of the highest mental health disparities, and some of the high SUD disparities in the state of Michigan. That means that I think the last stats were 1 out of every 8 African Americans are experiencing mental health disorder or illness. And again, if it don't get treated, it gets worse. Just like if you have diabetes, you don't treat it, it gets worse. If you got high blood pressure, you don't treat it, it gets worse. And we have to really focus in more on our overall mental health well-being. I was talking to this woman who had a child who had a mental health illness, and her child, she was in Pennsylvania, nice upper middle class woman, and she was having difficulty getting her child in a school that had the resources to support her child. And so she was struggling, her and her husband were struggling big time about this situation. And so she happens to attend a local charity fundraising event, and this woman she happened to sit down next to, and she was sharing and pouring her heart out to this woman about how she kept having these challenges not being able to get her daughter in this school system. And the woman who was the host of the actual charity event, she happened to be one of the co-founders of the top school in Pennsylvania to get her daughter in. And so the lady was talking about how she started getting emotional and crying about wanting to help her daughter, and she began to confide in this lady, and when she confided in the lady, she said, "You're not gonna have that problem no more." And the next day, the lady gets her daughter into the school. Now check this out. The lady, unbeknownst to her, also had 2 children. One son was a substance use user, and the other one had a mental health condition. And so the lady ended up supporting her because her husband died a couple years later. And when she support her, guess who she meet? Her 2 kids. Show you how God works. The daughter who had the mental health disorder, they graduated from the same high school together. And their senior year, the daughter nobody didn't want to have nothing to do with that woman's daughter. And this woman who had the daughter, she was the only one that said, "You can sleep in my room." And she was glad that she did it. You follow me? So just shows you how things turn around and work for the good when you're doing the right thing at the right time. We have to show love. We have to show concern. We have to demonstrate empathy for those that we love, whether we are with them or not. It's our responsibility to promote resiliency. Because it was just a beautiful story. And I got a whole lot of good stories and experiences that I can share around how, when we're doing everything in good, orderly direction, God, work. Are we being a good Samaritan? Because we have to be informed, and we have to treat people right. And I cannot say that enough. And we have to respect who people, you got handicapped, you got blind people, you have people who are paraplegic, you have people who have cerebral palsy, and they're born. Some mother carried them for 9 months or more or less. They deserve quality, effective support. They deserve respect from the community. They are our most vulnerable people in our community. And that's why it's our responsibility to be a leader, to be an advocate, to be informed, to break down the stigma, to support mental health in our communities and in our country. And understand, it's a political thing because it's finances that correlate with that. Our county, Wayne County, is responsible for almost $1 billion of money to support mental health services in Wayne County. Detroit Wayne Integrated Healthcare Network. They're the biggest provider, the biggest funder. And if y'all don't know the resources, we'll talk about that later. But you gotta understand, we gotta address this. And we gotta break down this stigma. Because we wanna all be emotionally healthy. Because if you're not emotionally healthy, how can you be the best you? If you're not spiritually, who said spiritually? Spiritually healthy. If you're not grounded, if you're not centered, if you're not connected, how can you be the best you? How many of y'all know when sometimes you listen to your favorite song and you feeling good and you dancing and you jolly? Any of y'all have those feelings? Yeah. All right. Yes. If a child walks up to you and says they feel like killing themselves, you have the responsibility to call 911. I have a responsibility as a professional to call 911. I have a responsibility to notify that parent. Suicide is serious. We've had an increase in black suicide in America. And now you have suicidal, then you also have non-injury suicidal, and then you have cutters. And folks who are cutting, they are actually feeling a relief. And that relief is not to feel the internal pain. So the cutting psychs them out some kind of way. You follow me? So it's really important to understand and get anybody who's suicidal help immediately, especially a child. Yes. Thank you. Thank you. Yes. You say the children that are raped? Sure. Wait, you saying rape or wreck? Okay. All right. So, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. No, it's serious. I mean, hold on, sister. Can I respond? She about to go. You about to go in on me, huh? All right. I can feel your passion. Rape, incest, any form of physical abuse is going to cause psychological abuse, right? And so the abuse, whether it's verbally or physically, has an impact in our psychological well-being. And so it's important to understand that some of us come from homes where you're going to get your ass beat. And that don't always amount to helping you out. Sometimes that affects your nerves. Sometimes that's stress. We have to identify stress in our community. And we have to identify when we need help with that stress. But we have a plethora of challenges in our community. And it all affects our mental health well-being. We have trauma. It has become normal to expect people shooting. It has become normal to expect people to drive down your neighborhood street going 90 miles an hour. in a 15 mile per hour street. We have to begin to stop normalizing everything. Now I'm gonna say one thing, wrap it up, because they're telling me to wrap up, and we probably need 2 good hours to really have some conversation. But I'm really grateful and thankful for all your participation. But I'm gonna tell you this quick story about a blind woman in New York City. She was blind and she loved the spring and summertime and going for walks. And so she can always tell when it's the springtime. And so in the spring of 2019, she can feel the sun radiating in her kitchen. She can hear the birds chirping outside. And when she opened her window, she had left out her house to go on her daily walk. And as she was going on her daily walk, she was skipping and she was singing a song, her favorite childhood song. And then she made it to the corner. And when she made it to the corner, she thought to herself, a couple minutes has passed by, because usually a bystander would come and help escort her across the street. But this particular day, it was a few minutes had gone by. And when a few minutes had gone by, a gentleman walked up and they began to continue. They sang the song that she was singing, and she said it felt like a big gentleman because he had this tenor voice, and they both skipped across the street singing her favorite song. And when they got across the street, the gentleman said, "Thank you for helping a blind man cross the street." Y'all follow me? Let's be good Samaritans in our community. Let's help those who need our help. Let's love those who need our help. And let's support everyone in our community. And let's continuously make this a blessed day to support everything that's going on. Thank you all 1,000 times.
It is my pleasure to introduce the next guest that we have. The speaker is Courtney Coco Mathis. Courtney is a publicist with a decade of public relations experience in the Metro Detroit area. Clients have been seen in Essence, Vogue, Billboard, Bravo, CBS, Sirius, Fader, Bet, VH1, and a lot more. Niche in entertainment public relations, culinary industry, fashion, political, nonprofit organizations, and corporations. Wow, really impressive. Creative direction and production developing Coco X PR, a boutique PR firm in Detroit. It is my pleasure to welcome Coco Mathis to the auditorium.
Good morning, everyone. How are you? We're here today because we're speaking on a common issue, especially in the Black community, mental health. The simple version of mental health is pretty much, I'm going to ask everyone here, and if you want to answer, pretty much you will say, am I okay? That's my definition. The most simplest way is a self-check on yourself and your self-care and your mental. Mental health is something in our community that seems to be pretty much taboo, where a lot of families, Black families, seem to just brush it up under the rug. It seems to be more of a trend now to speak on mental health and self-care and pretty much just staying, true to yourself and learning to say no. It's okay to say no. And if you're not okay that day, it's okay, as long as you just keep going. In my industry, I've worked with entertainers, politicians, and a lot of corporations. And in those industries and professions, we don't really get a chance to kind of just take a moment and reset. During the pandemic and facing COVID, which we're still facing today, we had to kind of look ourselves in the mirror and make it a priority of taking care of yourself and making time for yourself, for our loved ones. Your best self is when you put the time into yourself. And being productive sometimes is getting rest. You can't be your best self unless you invest in yourself, and health as well. Here on the screen, I have a moment where I will require you guys, or if you want to participate, to close your eyes for a second and raise your hand if you felt any of the following: eating or sleeping too much or too little, pulling away from usual activities. That includes simple things like just getting up and, taking a bath that day. Eating healthy, going for a walk, taking a minute to breathe. Sorry, that was a big adjustment. Can you hear me better? Okay. All right. And I never did an intro, guys. I'm sorry. I could talk about other people all day. Thank you for the great introduction. Thank you, Roy McCalister Jr. and family, for having me here today. This is like my first in-person engagement post-COVID, and I'm happy to be here. So another thing I've learned, everyone deals with some of those things. You may not relate to everyone, but sometimes, hey, today may not be your day, and that's okay. Thinking or harming yourself or others, I feel like that would be the end of the spectrum. If you feel that way, to look into your free resources that are available and get the help you need. It's okay. That's what we're here for. And through my podcast, it's called Multitask Podcast, we make those resources available. It's available on Apple Music Podcasts and Amazon. And with that, I pretty much learned like self-expression and learning to deal with some of my own mental health moments where I don't feel my best. Like as a new mother, I've had 2 kids under 2. And it's amazing, but it could be challenging, especially with like a COVID kid that like during he's a quarantine baby, I would say. So yeah, I dealt with postpartum and mom guilt, and those are all things that are a part of mental health. Girl, you crazy. In the Black community, Black women they just have to be strong. It's a stereotype of the mad Black woman, or the woman that just has to be okay because we're so used to saying we have to do what we gotta do. Imagine if you are anywhere in the world doing what makes you happy. If we actually sat and take a moment to feel and reflect on what makes us our happiest, try to close your eyes and relax and just picture yourself on the beach. In those moments of enjoying the wind and the waves and just taking a breath of fresh air. What does that look like? So that was a description of something that makes me happy. How does it make you feel? In those moments, even if you have to get creative, download the Waves app. Go to YouTube and type in, a sound bath, meditation, doing some new hobbies like yoga, and practicing self-manifestings and just good vibes. What is mental health? I like to ask, or if you guys want to raise your hand on your idea or definition of mental health. And there's no right or wrong answer. And I have special treats for participants. Okay, well, there's no right or wrong answer. But this is the description according to the mentalhealth.gov. Mental health includes our emotional, psychological, and social well-being. It affects how we think, feel, and act. It also helps determine how we handle stress, relate to others, and make choices. The way we feel can translate into our actions, and our energy is contagious. So you always want to surround yourself with good energy and be the good energy you want to see. Any questions so far? Imposter syndrome. This word is like, I never heard this growing up. Like, in college, I went to Western Michigan University, and imposter syndrome is a part of mental health. I felt with that this week, to be honest with you. It's been challenging, of course, just balancing motherhood and work life and making time for yourself, but just questioning yourself and your expertise of knowing, like, hey, do I deserve to be here? Accepting certain accolades or acknowledging your good work. It's okay to give yourself a tap on the back and say, you got this. You deserve to be here. And everyone has their time. And not to practice self-doubt and worrying. Let go of perfectionism. Knowing you're not alone, be kind to yourself, and say yes to opportunities. Learning to show up and show out. Yes, I have a question. Mm-hmm.
Sometimes we feel like they may not understand what it is that we're going through. So we start to doubt ourselves, and that's where we go into like hermit mode, and it's just like isolation because you feel like you don't have nobody to go to, or like our family, close family and friends wouldn't understand because you feel like mentally you're on another level, and that's something that we don't speak on because we feel like a lot of people wouldn't understand, instead of just speaking on it so they can understand, so you can receive the type of love and support that you want to get.
Absolutely. And it seems to be the blame too, I would say, for a lot of millennials, where we're in the age of social media, so we're so used to, say, keeping up with the Joneses, or, you know, always tracking other people's success in comparison, when everyone's journey is different, and it's like the thing of staying in your own lane. Embrace the feeling, tracking your success, and distinguish humility and fear. Okay. Hi.
It's really a question. Thank you for.
And if you don't mind, can you say your name for me?
Can you hear me? Okay. I am Dr. Shantae. I like this slide that you have. I've just learned, being a woman, a black woman, and a psychiatric provider, that being your authentic self, learning who you are, and I say people, and walking that out is one of the highest level of mental health that a person can have. Just being authentic, learning who you are, and walking that out. A lot of mental health stems from people trying to either be something that they're not, or trying to not to be something that they are. And so just learning how to be our authentic selves leads to mental health.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Okay. This is my favorite slide. Self-care. My husband and family probably get tired of me using this word. But it's important. And this is another word that's kind of like trending, like self-care. What does that mean to you? Anyone want to raise their hand? Okay, look, that's motherhood. Balancing the mental health and motherhood is making that time out for yourself. Yes? Do you have a question? Hold on, man, 1 second. Yes.
Take a shower, to do your hair, your nails. That's self-care. Some people can't do it. They just can't. And when you go in a state of that and you see somebody that can't do it, then the slide before, that's a sign that they need help. Self-care is the first sign of a mental issue.
Are you done?
Practicing good sleep hygiene. Thank you so much. When you practice good sleep hygiene, you're more productive, you have less headaches, your body feels good, and it just shows like putting in the work. Make yourself a priority. Practicing, okay, have a cup of tea, sit in the sunlight, and take a shower or a bath. Sunbathing, planting your feet in the grass, in the sun on a good day are all practices of self-care. Balance and meditation is pretty much the most simple, free self-care you could practice. And of course, staying fit doesn't hurt either. Health is wealth. Okay, I need you guys' participation. For 60 seconds, let's take a deep breath together and stretch. I know we're social distancing. If you just want to take a time to stand up and just stretch it out, you know, wiggle around, and we call it a dragon breath in yoga. I'm a big yogi. I try to be. We call it a dragon breath. It's a no judgment zone. You have your mask on or social distance. You take a deep breath through your nose. Inhale, exhale through your mouth. And you could yell as loud as you want. Yes. So sometimes we're moving so fast during the day, we don't get time to stretch. Touch your head, touch your toes. It's the most simplest things. I practice with my toddlers. They love it. It's just like, wow, I feel good after I actually do it, and I don't have to rush or overthink anything. It's just a good way to warm your body up for the day. Those are all just fun mom hacks and just any hacks to life, mother, fathers, and professionals, especially in the workplace. Sometimes if you're working at your desk, working remotely, working from home, it's good just to get your blood flowing. Ways to practice, I already mentioned exercise, meditation, yoga, and a balanced diet. Making sure you make time to hydrate yourself and have a balanced diet is very important. And you could do that pretty much with organization and planning, meal preps, get yourself ready for the work week, and we're always on the go, eating fast food or just something convenient, and sometimes that causes you to crash, and we don't want that. Motherhood is a beautiful picture of a perfect mom and her baby on the sunset somewhere, and motherhood doesn't really look like this. It can get kind of ugly, Your kid isn't always going to be smiling. And this mom has the perfect smile in this slide. Balancing family time is very important. It's the family bonding and trying to keep traditions in the home. There's some simple things that families in our community seem to kind of forget, just outside of Thanksgiving and Christmas and Easter's, birthdays. making it more consistent. You know, I understand we had a challenging year with COVID. Families and friends are starting to, you know, just finally get together in person. And it's like you cherish those moments. And it comes to like actually living in the moment instead of, you know, always overthinking or always on the go, go, go. And it's free. Get fun family games, movie nights, dinner, self-care mommy time. For me, it could be something as simple as going to Bath and Body Works or taking a bath. You have to do what's best for you, even if you have to plan to make it happen. Comes to scheduling and planning. I'm learning to get better with this. I'm not perfect as far as time management, but once you get in the groove of it, it actually makes things a lot easier. Organization and time management, multitasking, that's my favorite word. It's a spin on multitasking, and it's pretty much balancing all the things in motherhood and making yourself a priority as well, because sometimes we seem to always put others before ourselves, and you can forget the important things. And plus, you can't have a happy kids without a happy mom. Postpartum and mom guilt. Those are also things I really didn't believe in really as I was going through it. But it's like, moms just go through a lot. And you kind of forget or don't have time to just dwell or sit around to even like, whoa, postpartum or mom guilt is like just a thing to say. But everyone can face it. And check on your family and friends. Just being there for support or sending like Grubhub or, you know, it's the simple things. I like food and mommy time. So here I have a question. What's the best way to deal with balancing your mental health? Yes. Yes. I love those big jugs where it's like check in on your gallon. Hey, almost there. I've done it. Yes.
One of the things that I found to be very peaceful for me is I have a son, he's 5, and he literally talks all day. So it's like any chance that I get to where I'm in my house by myself or I'm in the car by myself, like I'm in the car, when I'm in the car by myself, I don't even turn the radio on. I sit and I drive and I collect my thoughts and really just, it's just like that. It's just a different level of peace for me, you know, because we do so much and our minds be racing, and that's when the anxiety build up, and, you know, we get to worrying about stuff, and, you know, just the all day, just on the go, mommy thing. But sitting in peace sometimes says a lot, and it does a lot mentally. And I feel like that's just one of the things that, and it's also a form of meditation. When people think of meditation, you don't always have to be, you know, legs crossed and, you know, it's, meditation is journaling, sitting in peace, just being to yourself, you know. So I think that we see the things like on TV, you know, and it's like, well, I ain't got time to do that, when it's actually like, it's whatever makes you happy.
Yes.
Whatever brings you the inner peace.
Thank you so much. Yes.
Yes, basically the lady at the end basically summed it up pretty well, I think. But another thing that really keeps me grounded and balanced is my meditation and quiet time with God.
Amen. Yes. Hallelujah.
And exercise and think positive. And what you went through, you can help somebody else.
Yes. And that's very important how she said positive thinking. We didn't really touch base on even like self-affirmations. Write yourself a reminder, practice those things on your drive home, listen to an encouraging podcast, or, like just writing in silence sometimes, That gets the job done. But practicing those self-affirmations and manifesting what you believe, because what if you could believe it, you can achieve it. Yes.
I like to go out to Mill Island and sit by the water. Water's very calming to me.
Very peaceful. You're my kind of girl. Yeah, I want to get a boat,
So maybe one more comment?
Yes.
Aside for reading my Bible in the morning and praying, I write in my journal every day.
Journaling is big.
Yes.
I love those cute little adult journals with the cool stickers from Home Goods. Yeah. Yes. Okay. It was the young lady in the front, the black and white. Dancing is good exercise too. Hey, yeah. Uh-huh. That's how you do it. Hustling, ballrooming, all that fun stuff. I'm still trying to learn to do the Tamia hustle. Yeah. I'm a little rocky. Yes. Okay, thank you. Yes, young man. This is our last one. We wrapping it up.
I like to go in the backyard and play on my bike, and I can ride bike.
Thank you so much. He said riding his bike. That's great exercise. And oh, you a big boy. Thank you. Look, and speaking positive affirmations into our kids, it's never too late to practice mental health through adolescence onto adulthood. And we did audience and Q&A. And if you feel free to ask me anything, there's a no judgment zone. You can reach me at heygirl@momtytaz.com or info@cocoxpr.com. heygirl@momtytask.com. Thank you so much. Hope you have a great weekend.
Thank you. That was a very inspiring and exhilarating performance there from our PR specialist, who just has made me very enlightened and made me think twice about what I need to do with 6 children. We are very blessed, very honored. I'm going to bring to the podium Congresswoman Brenda Lawrence of Michigan's 14th District. Congresswoman Lawrence represents 14th Congressional District that includes a portion of Detroit, the city of Southfield, and 16 other cities located in Oakland and Wayne County. Living in the 14th District her entire life, she was first elected to the U.S. House of Representatives in November of 2014 and has been re-elected in 2016, 2018, and 2020. Congresswoman Lawrence serves as co-chair of the Democratic Women's Caucus, second vice chair of the Congressional Black Caucus, and co-chair of the Congressional Caucus on Black-Jewish Relations. Born and raised in Detroit, Congresswoman Lawrence is a product of Michigan's public school system. She is an alumni of Pershing High School and earned her bachelor's degree in public administration from Central Michigan University. So without holding her any longer, I'd like to please welcome Congresswoman Lawrence to the podium.
I want to say this is a perfect day. Thank you so much for your presentation earlier. I just got off the plane after being on the floor last night and having a very interesting, if you want to call it that, week of debating and voting. Pray for our country. I want to say good morning again. I'm Congresswoman Brenda Lawrence. I want to thank Councilman Roy McCalister Jr. for hosting this event. This is not my first time being here. The reason why I'm so happy to be here is because this is a topic that we, and especially in the Black community, we need to have this discussion. I like to preference it. I had a town hall similar to this where I had a panel of healthcare professionals, and one of the therapists said, I have a t-shirt. It says, I go to church, I love God, and I see my therapist. So often in the Black community, when we see someone we know or a loved one or a friend, say, girl, just pray and ask God to fix it. But if you see someone having chest pains, you call the doctor. Yes, you pray for them, but you know, if they have hypertension, did you take your medicine? We embrace medical support for our physical health, but when it comes to our mental health, we seem to kind of back off. And you know, we demonize mental health by saying you're crazy or you just need to get right with God. Some people really need the professional help of mental health. And thank you for the tools that we receive, some that we can do ourselves. I want you to know what I'm doing. I'm here today to talk to you about what I'm doing in Congress. Because when you start talking about mental health, and I was looking at some of the scribing that I saw on the screen, COVID has really pulled the scab off of mental health. Domestic violence, suicide, addiction, all of those things were just highlighted because we were locked in place at home and we couldn't run away or get distracted with something else. It was very clear that we as a community, we need to look at mental health. I want you to know that I serve as the vice chair, in addition to other things, on the House Appropriations Committee, which is one of the most powerful and most important, because that's where your money gets spent. All your tax dollars come into the federal tax dollars, come into the House of Appropriations, and it's my job to work on assigned committees to allocate the funds. So I'm proud to say I serve on the Labor, Health, Human Services budget for the United States Congress. And we, as a House of Representatives, passed the fiscal year with historic levels for mental health services. Because like myself, there are 435 of us all around this country. We are seeing the need to invest in mental health. We have fund the substance abuse and mental health services higher than we have in any other year. We increased the funding for mental health block grants, which support preventive screenings and treatment across the healthcare spectrum. Now, something that some of you may not know, because I have to look at it at all levels. I don't know if that was discussed today. But mental health is having an impact on our hospitals. When I visit, and in the 14th district, I have probably about 15 hospitals in my district, the emergency rooms, policing, because you know someone can be having a mental episode. What do? We call 911, and the police comes with guns pulled. The person may not need to be incarcerated. They may need a mental health professional to intervene, because what other option do we have? One of the things I'm pushing for is that there's a different number. If you have a loved one who's having a mental health episode other than 911, you can call 711, 711. I need somebody to come right now. The other thing that a lot of the police forces around the country, they're asking for funding to have a proportion of the police force on all shifts trained in mental health. And if a person calls and say, they're off their meds. That's the number one complaint. They have medication, but they stop taking it. And so they're having an episode. Instead of police coming with guns waving, that they send a mental health person to intervene. So with that, I'm proud to say that the Mental Health Crisis Response Partnership, we have funded a pilot. So in Congress, the way the money works, if there is a program that is meeting a criteria that we feel we need to make a national mandate, we have to fund a pilot. And so we are funding a pilot that will transfer 911 calls from the police dispatch to mental health crisis responders when calls come in. In these situations, someone who needs a doctor or a licensed professional will get that person at the door, not just armed police. I also want you to know that we're looking at funding for school-based health centers. Now, I'm one of those old folks that when I went to school, there was a nurse office in the school that was staffed the whole time I was in school. So if I had a call, if I had a rash or something, I could go see the nurse. Now, in addition to that, we know that teachers see a lot of signs of neglect. The child coming to school in the same clothes, or the same dirt stain is on their face, or they're always hungry. They're sleeping because they're not sleeping at home. And so what do we do with that? We can call for the intervention of our social services, but that child needs help. And social services usually result in foster care. And one of the things that I personally have put my stick in the sand, I married a foster child. I know the impact of when a child, for no reason of their own, their parents fail them. And we put them and we said, they're the ward of the court, which means government are their parents. And so I take in a foster child every year in my office as an intern. And so these are children who are aged out and on their way to college. And this young lady said to me, she said, "Congresswoman, I have been in 21 homes in my life." She said, "I have been abused. I ran away from home." She said, "I talked to other children who are in foster care like me, and they say they want to kill themselves." I'm saying, she said, "They're cutting, they're taking drugs, they're being sexually abused." She said, "Why is it, Congresswoman, we're a ward of the court. You mandate, if you're going to be a foster parent, you have to take that child and get a physical examination. It's not even optional. That child has to be checked out." She said, "But you know what you do to us foster children? You look us in the eye and say, 'Anything you want to talk about? You okay?'" She said, "I'm a kid." And then she said, "After I was in foster care so long, I knew the answer I give has consequences. And I can be taken away from a situation and put in even a worse one." She said, "Because let me tell you something. If I'm sleeping on the floor in the basement with a sleeping bag, and they give me one meal a day, and no one's beating me or sexually abusing me, and there's warm in there," she said, I learned not to complain. So think about that child having to process that and what that elevates to as they become an adult. So I have introduced a bill for timely mental health for foster youth, which means just like you have to take them to a physical doctor, get a physical medical exam, every child coming in foster care will get mental health. She said, if I had the tools to use as a child to deal with what I had to go through. She said, because I go through more than most adults go through in their lifetime. She said she was 19. She said, I'm 19 years old. What I've gone through, most adults don't go through in a lifetime. So I'm so proud of that. And I'm a co-chair of the Congressional Foster Care Caucus. To give you some facts, foster youth are 5 times more likely to suffer from trauma, PTSD, and many do not have access to mental health. My bill will require a child to receive a mental health screening when they enter, and then a yearly exam on the same rate then we do the physical. Mental health touches everyone. I want to share with you, I was on the floor on January the 6th when we were attacked. And I sat on that floor and they said, put on a gas mask, find a place to shelter for safety, and then put us, hearing them banging on the door trying to get to us, and then having police with gun draws running us down back stairways and hallways. Mental health for me is real. Because I went through so many stages there. You know, I'm from Detroit. I'm like, what you mean, hi, what is this? You know, what is happening? I went through confusion. This can't be happening in our United States Capitol. To, oh my God, am I going to die today? So someone walked up to me, and that's when I realized it was real. I was in the grocery store, and someone saw me. I was in a department store, and I heard someone scream like, ah, Miss Lawrence. And I ducked. I did like this. And she said, oh, I'm sorry. I said, I just didn't realize my nerves were that bad, because I was going to shake it off, right? Just shake it off, and, you know, you'll be all right. But when she was just happy to see me. She said, I hadn't seen you in a while. And her loud voice, unexpected, caused me to get into this defense mechanism. Normally, I'll just turn around and say, who is that? You know, just laugh and talk it out. So mental health is real. It does not give anyone privilege. I don't care what your status is, how much you pray every day, how much money you have. So take care of yourself. And thank you to my hero right here, the councilman, for taking the time to invest in us. Because we, as Black people, have been trained throughout the years. Slavery, you name it, civil rights, abuse, all of that. We have been trained to suck it in and fight through it. We have help, and take advantage of it. Thank you so much.
Congresswoman Brenda Lawrence. Give her another round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. I go to her and I seek out her advice on so much because she is at the federal level. And I just want to thank her. This is my hero. This is my hero because I have went to her not only for mental health but other issues. But what she talked about on January 6th is what I stated as far as mental health is life. What she went through changed her whole perspective as far as what was going on. Just like she said, prior to January 6th, somebody, hey, well, how you doing? But she had to flinch. That's what I'm talking about. So I just love her to death. And I pray for her because I was watching as that was going on, and the first person I thought is, what's happening to my congresswoman? Because I could not see her. And I'm emotional now about it. Because we have people out there, a congresswoman, and you want to take her life? Ladies and gentlemen, mental health is also for those who are out here to try to abuse. They have serious issues and serious problems. But it is us that to reach out to them and say, look, you need some healing, you need some help, and you need God in your life. Because until you get there, you're going to continue this, and you're going to not only hurt someone else, but you're going to get hurt. So, Congresswoman, thank you so very much. I know your schedule is busy, and I really appreciate you. Again, Congresswoman Brenda Lawrence, everyone.
This next speaker is actually someone special who we were, I guess, recently introduced to. So Dr. Greg Neyman, he is a part of and the co-founder of Epic Health. And this is one of the mental health and medical clinics, if I can call it that, in our district, so District 2. And so that makes him and Epic Health near and dear to us. He's an undergraduate and graduate of Wayne State University, at Wayne State School of Medicine and residency at William Beaumont Hospital. So again, he's the co-founder of and practicing physician at Epic Health. So from about 2000 to current, that's your current role, and chief medical officer. So I would like for Dr. Neyman to come up, tell us more about yourself, tell us more about Epic Health, and just share with us all of what you guys are doing in the community. So I give you guys Greg Neyman, Dr. Greg Neyman.
Good afternoon, everybody. Hopefully not too tired after lunch. So yeah, they told me that I'm going to be going after the Congresswoman and then after lunch, and I was like, that's like, being a singer and coming after Aretha, right? It's like how'd I get this gig? And so I appreciate you guys sticking through this and hearing this out. So thank you for the introduction. So I'm Dr. Greg Neyman. I'm a board-certified internal medicine doctor, which is a physician for adults, as well as a pediatrician. So I have two specialties. I see adults and kids. In our offices, we see all ages. More importantly about our office is we incorporate a model called integrated health. So an integrated health is a term coined in the early 2000s. And what it really means is that people come to their primary care physician, and they are expecting to take care of their diabetes and their hypertension and their colds and their cuts and their bruises. But other thing that we've been finding over the years and over the decades is that it's not just those things that we were responsible for, because we see patients for almost all of the other things as well. Many of the things that we were talking about today, as a matter of fact, we'll just kind of prep up the slides here because as we're talking here. Sure. So, again, a little bit of background about us is we moved from just your typical primary care to an integrated model over a decade ago. And what that means is we started to bring in other specialties to help to take care of our patients at the point of care. Instead of having to go out to here, there, and everywhere else, it's you coming to one location. And you're going to see this as more of a model that's going to be going around in the communities. Mr. Johnson here earlier today was talking, and he actually represents a mental health facility in Detroit, and he has something similar to this where they also take care of primary care. Now, they take care of more complex medical conditions, and that's one of the things I was going to touch about today, is that mental health is a very large spectrum of things, right? So from mental health, the word itself just means, again, your emotional well-being. Now, mental health disorder goes all the way to the point where now you have a medical condition that is not allowing you to function, right? This is something that is causing or impairing somebody from able to do their daily tasks or their social interactions, and people don't want to be around that person. So it's a large spectrum of, I just feel blue today, or I am feeling elated. I'm doing great. I'm happy to be here in front of all these beautiful people. So it's a large spectrum in terms of what we talk about mental health. And today, and what we're talking about specifically, is mental health illness, and then all the way to mental health disorders, and how that's being impacted. And what I'm here for as a practicing clinician is to kind of talk about, well, what are some of the things in the evolution that's going on in the health community to help to take care of these things. So, a clinician, I look at it a little bit differently than, again, the people who are out there, right? Except for when I'm at home, then try not to be the doctor and the dad, but that's hard to do. So as a clinician, we study and we take a lot of time in terms of looking at statistics. We are trained in looking at incidences and prevalences and the number to treat and what this medication will do, as you guys are probably all aware now, and all the different things that you'll read on the internet about, even like things like the COVID vaccine or COVID treatments. So what is the, the emergency use and all those things? There's so much in terms of the science behind what we do, and that's one of the reasons why people come to the clinicians in the first place. It's like, all right, doc, I'm not going to go and sift through all that on the internet and all that reading. I'm coming to you because you're my consultant. I'm hoping and I appreciate the fact that you're spending your time to go and research all of these things, to come back and then personalize the care to me and my family and my loved ones, right? You're using us as a consultant, an advocate for you. So, but again, I'd be remiss if I didn't speak about the things that I've been trained on. Clinically, it's the percentages. And if you look at the screen, it's kind of alarming when you look at it in terms of mental health. And as I was preparing for this today, it was even one of those things where you kind of scratch your head and you're like, man, I don't even appreciate it because I'm in it every day, right? And people who suffer mental health are in it every day, and they don't also necessarily look at it from the big picture. And I think that's one of the reasons why we're all here today, and Councilman McCalister put this together, is so we can get a better understanding of it. So just a quick review of some of the statistics. And you see on the slide there, 1 in 5 adults, 1 in 5. So if we take a count in this auditorium today, how many people are in here? So let's say there are, 40 of us? That means 8 people in this auditorium statistically, just to put it into perspective, are going to have a mental health condition this year, right? 1 out of 20, so if we said there's 40, 2 of us in this room are going to have, quote unquote, a severe mental illness this year. So it will be relevant to every one of us in our lives, period. I guess one of the other scary statistics is the fact that 1 in 6 kids are going through some kind of mental health condition. So, and again, we have some children here today. And if you think about it from a school perspective, the average school size in terms of a class, about 24 kids, right? So that means 4 of those kids in any one class is going to have a mental health condition. That's how prevalent it is. That's how much we're going to see it, and it's how it's going to impact us. So the other statistic that was kind of alarming as well is that 50%, and I know that some of the other speakers were talking about this earlier, but especially the Congresswoman, 50% of mental illness is going to get defined by the time they're 14, right? And then 75% by the time they're 24. So yes, if caught early enough, we could potentially impact things. And I heard, several things when I was out there, and I put my clinician hat on, and I was like, some of the things that Mr. Johnson was talking about the things that we hear and that we allow, in terms of, and you've seen this in the media in the past, the bullying that happens, even the statements that you see, and again, and it's kind of, you look at it from different angles where men are told, hey, you got to man up, right? Well, again, that's not necessarily bringing it out to the forefront. It's not allowing us to talk about it. You're basically just shoving it down and say, you got to keep that down here, don't talk about it. And that's not what we're trying to do. We're trying to get more awareness. We're trying to talk more about mental illness. We are trying to get more people to the resources that they need. So. Yes, ma'am.
They go through what is called puberty. Is that they just totally ignoring that the kids, all of them, is it like it's a group of them, all of them, 12, 13, 14, puberty. Is that not considered anything that the professionals want to address?
Well, so it's a good question. So now, again, we're going back to the spectrum, right? So where you have normal behavior, and I believe that was discussed here, again, developmental illnesses versus just developmental milestone. So we've all gone through, well, not all, because our young gentleman here hasn't gone through puberty yet, but so as you go through puberty, as we go through life, right, there's, during infancy, we have certain developmental milestones, and then as you start to age between your toddlerhoods, right, the terrible twos that we talk about, because, again, their interaction with environment, and then you're going to go on into later childhood and then eventually to adolescence. And yes, the hormones, again, there's 2 times in our lives where we get acne. It's as an infant because of the amount of hormones that we have. And then again, in adolescence, it's 2 growth periods of our lives and the chemicals in our bodies that are going on that impact how our brain is functioning, how our body is functioning. And yes, as adults, we're like, hey, what's going on with this child or this kid? Well, yeah, part of it could be adolescence, but then again, is there something underlying that's also going on or is it beyond normal developmental milestones, and are we now getting into some disorder or an illness? And that's where, again, bringing them in and talking on a yearly basis, and Congresswoman was talking about even kids with special needs coming in, like our children who are foster children coming in yearly. That's now just getting a little bit more understanding of, like, you got to bring them in so we can do the assessments to say, is this normal behavior? We just need to kind of continue to coach on that and wait till they grow out of that phase and watch for the social and peer interactions. Or is this now, nope, this is actually abnormal behavior. There's some clues that there may be some substance use going on. There's maybe, again, poor sleep habits. There's a little bit too much or an addiction to devices and things like that that we need to address. So it's a good question. I hope I answered your question. So again, just to also put in perspective, and we were just talking about, I was mentioning that diabetes, and high blood pressure. 40% of adults in the US are going to get high blood pressure. So over 100 million people, right? So it will affect almost half of the community. Diabetes affects almost 10 to 13%. And remember from the last slide, and from here, what we're talking about, 19% or 20%, 1 in 5 people, are going to get a mental health issue. So it is more prevalent than diabetes. Yet how much money is being funneled, how much outward education is being done on diabetes and diabetes education, yet 2 times higher than diabetes is mental health issues, and we don't have any of the funding, right? Yes, ma'am.
Signs and symptoms of diabetes is just like some mental health issues, and it needs to be addressed. They don't just need to go and say, this person right there, this kid right here, they have mental health issues. Check out the medical portion of it. Do the test. See if they're diabetic. You know, and they really not addressing that.
It's a good point, and I appreciate you segueing me into the next part of my discussion. So when we're talking about, again, in terms of integrated healthcare, and why there is the need for integrated healthcare is because of now the blending between all of that, right? So and again, it's another stat that I don't have on the slide, but it's a good one to point out right now, is that almost 79%, so almost 80% of medications prescribed for mental illness is prescribed by primary care physicians. So almost 80%. And, right, so not psychiatrists. And one of the reasons is because how few psychiatrists are available, and how little the health community has been integrating technology into all of this to really truly make it an integrated model. So, but that being said, yes, in a primary care setting, we see patients that come in for one medical condition or another, and then after communicating with the patient and building some trust and relationship, because it's hard to unload all of that on your doc. You know, like, hey, by the way, I got this and this and this going on, and that may be impacting it. They usually come into us with symptoms, right? I'm feeling fatigued. I have loss of energy. I'm not sleeping right. And this is bothering me, and I'm getting more pain. And we ask, well, has there been more? Has there been more damage or anything to this, that, and the other? Nope. So they feel all of these, what we call somatic symptoms, but it's likely related to a mental health issue. And that takes a while to kind of peel back the layers of that onion to figure it out. That's really what's going on here. And in real life, it's a blend, right? There is no this is this and this is that. And we'll go over in a case study, if I'm permitted, to kind of show that. So again, I get the privilege of going through and talking about the integration between the science and clinical. So neuroscience, if we're talking about the science part of it, that the part that they train us in med school and in clinical practice when we first start. And just kind of a admission, so when we first start and we're in medical school and we're graduating, we're going on to our residency and taking on our specialties. So just so the people who have not gone through that, when you first are doing all that, what do you care about is really, boy, I got to pass these tests and I have to impress these mentors of mine, right? So these are my bosses, and I got to show up, and I got to know that I got to know the stuff. And then, yeah, I have to take this test to get my medical degree. So we call that the boards and wards, right? So we study for our boards and wards. And then you go on, and then you go into clinical practice, and then you start getting relationships with your patients, and you're like, oh my God, there's so much that needs to be done. And then it gets the blending of that clinical part of it with the science part of it. But going back to the science part of it, so neuroscience, right, the brain. So if I took, raise the hands in the room if we said, okay, what is the most important organ in our body? So some may say the heart, right? Some may say, yep, it's the brain. Some may say, you know, if they have bad COPD and they're on oxygen, they're going to say, oh, it's my lungs. You know, some will say, oh, you know, they're in a transplant list and it's my liver, right? So it's unique to everybody. But I would say that the majority of people, when I ask that question, they do say it's the brain. It's our central nervous system. It's our central computer. It is managing the rest of our bodies, right? So we have to take care of it. Now, in the neuroscience part of it, when we're talking pure neuroscience, there's a lot of different aspects of neuroscience. And you can see that from the slide here. Again, these are all different subspecialties or categories of neuroscience. And not until we get into behavioral or clinical neuroscience do we really talk about this is where we start talking about us taking care of patients and what really matters to us. Because I can go on, and in terms of talking about the more of the physiological part of it. So there's, and I'll step back and I'll give you a little bit of a lecture on it. So I know we're starting to glaze over in the eyes and we're all feeling lunch. But so there's really about 5 to 10 chemicals in our brain that control everything. Were you aware of that? That everything right now in your brain, there's about 5 or 10, so a handful or two of chemicals that control everything. When I move my arm, a chemical was released, and that's why I moved my arm. If someone pinched me, another chemical is released in a different part of my brain, and it told me I was pinched. When I'm feeling excited, a different chemical in a different area. So we can mess with those 5 or 10 chemicals and change all those things. How much pain you're feeling, how much excitement you're feeling, how much fatigue you're feeling. So medicine's gotten really good on those things and controlling those things and turning up or down. Now, the caveat to that is that when we start messing with those chemicals are not only in our brains. So there's a common chemical, Prozac, for example. Prozac, it affects serotonin, one of the 5 or 10 chemicals in our brains. So serotonin, only 20% of serotonin is in your brain. 80% is in your gut. So you come in, you say, Doc, I'm not feeling right, I'm feeling depressed, you know, my so-and-so just passed away from COVID, and I need something, and I've been trying to work it out, I've been talking to my pastor, I've been talking to my family, and just not getting there. So then you get prescribed a medication, that you're told to go and speak to a therapist, and thankfully that you have these resources in some of the areas, and then you were able to do that. Now, yep, and then you come back and say, I'm feeling better, but not quite where I want to be, still not productive, so then you up the dose. Well, then all of a sudden you come back and you're like, well, now I'm getting diarrhea, I have no longer any sexual desire, and boy, my migraines are killing me. Because again, you got to be careful of how much we mess around with those things. And that's why I say neuroscience to us is very important, because you're coming to us, as I mentioned, as consultants, so we can speak about these things to you, but we need that input, we need that constant communication, we need to make sure that it's not just a take this pill and I'm better type of deal. And we see that in society, unfortunately. So that's the neuroscience part of it. And on the mental health side of it, again, mental health just means your emotional, right? So it's how your mentality is working at that time. It's not good or bad. It's just your mental health. So we don't get into problems until we start talking about illnesses or disorders. So when we start talking about how do we bridge that now? How do we bridge the neuroscience and the clinical knowledge together so we can make sure that our patients are getting better? And that's where some of the things that, again, when we're talking about integrated models, it's not a person approach, it's a team approach, and we have to start getting more of those out there. Mr. Johnson this morning, and it's not just the medical side of it, it's the community. It's getting in with other team members, including religious. So there is a part of mental health called religiosity. And religiosity basically means that there are benefits of the whole religious experience to help with mental health. So, and some people, they poo-poo it or they downplay it, but it's well studied. There's good data about being active in religion or meditation or whatever it is that your religion is or that you want to claim as your religion. So here is kind of a classic case. So when I was prepping for this and I was seeing a patient, it actually, to your point, we were talking to a patient of mine and we were doing what we call an intake. So she's coming in and this is a typical patient. She's comes in and she's like, yep, I'm a new patient here, 60-year-old female. She's got certain medical conditions that are very common, high blood pressure, diabetes. Her high blood pressure has caused her to go on and then develop it into what we call diastolic heart failure because it's been uncontrolled for a while. And when we were probing her, we were like, what's going on? Why have you not been taking care of your blood pressure and your diabetes? Why haven't you come into a doctor for a while? And she admits, she said, well, I have a lot going on, right? This is a classic case. I have a lot going on. I got so much going on at my home. My daughter is living with me and her kids are there. And at the time, I believe she was pregnant, one of her daughter. And she's like, and I'm also got my hands full with my son, and they're lazy, no good, because they're not even helping out with the household stuff, and I'm on a fixed income and barely, getting all the stuff needed for the home. And just to go over the spectrum of things. So as I've been seeing her over the weeks, she would come in and she was like, then her daughter delivered, and she was so excited. This beautiful baby, I'm looking at this child, and it's just so much joy, and can't believe it, and I'm helping out with it, and it's like, and she was just every day happy, smiling. And her pain score on some of the things that she had some chronic low, hip and low back stuff going on, went way down. And it's just how that all kind of plays, that whole mental health soup, we call it. So the chemicals are going up and down in our brain, and at that point, she was feeling great. Her pain score went down, her communication, even her son had stopped using chemicals at that time because of, again, just the beauty of having this newborn around. That went on only for a little while, and then we started to see, as we started speaking with her again, that, well, she was having more issues, and then we lost her to follow-up for a little while because it started to take a hold of her. So she said, we haven't seen her. She didn't follow up with our care manager. She didn't follow up in terms of the office. And when we did get her back in eventually into the office, we started to see that, boy, her medical health was poor again, her mental health was poor, and again, her stress levels were sky high. And as you were mentioning, it's well, what do you tackle first, right? So she was like, just get my sugars under control, just get my blood pressure under control, I'll deal with everything else. But we know that because she was trying to deal with everything else, it was hard for her to even focus on her medical health. The lines get really blurred. So now, one of the things in terms of mental health, again, storytelling. So we've been up here and I was telling this little story, this vignette about our patient. But remember that we could even, just by storytelling, start messing with our own hormones, right? So if we were to tell a joyful story, our dopamine levels goes up in our brains. We feel, again, very focused, very attentive. So if I was to tell you about like the first day when I was going on the job and got my lab coat, put it on, walking in there, and the doc was like, hey, congratulations, I'm gonna have you see these 2 patients over here, but I have to tell you, these 2 patients are our worst patients. They've never listened, they're really ornery, they're gonna go in there and they're going to give you a hard time. They hate new docs, they think you guys think you know everything, and you're not going to be able to win them over. Just telling you off the bat. So I'm sitting there, brand new, just came in, and my heart's racing. I'm like, really? This is gonna be my first 2 patients? So I don't even get a break. I go to one patient, and then the next patient. So I'm sitting there, and I'm like, okay, what do I do? Go back to your training. It's not new. I'm going to do this. It's all going to be good. So gathered myself, opened the door, walked in. So that is an example of how I can raise your dopamine just like that. So right now, you guys, because you're listening to that story, we're all focused, and I was able to raise your dopamine in your head. And my point is for that is just that that is an important hormone. Now, the public can do that for themselves. You can raise your own attention. You don't necessarily need to be on medications for ADHD and all these things, for mild ADHD, I should take it back. There are things that can be done and taught about how to do that for yourselves. Just like that little quick story, by the way, that didn't happen at all. It was just a made-up story, just to show you guys that we can manipulate hormones in our brains and in our bodies just by simple things. Another way to increase your dopamine is by certain foods. Certain foods carry high dopamine. And the better we eat, and again, as a society, as a community, if we learn about these things, we can impact these things. So, and again, we can do multiple different stories and vignettes, and we can go over how I can manipulate the hormones in your brain and the chemicals, and then change the way you interact with even each other after this. So, that is my talk. Oh, I take it back. So again, some of the things that we're doing and working with is more collaborations, more integration, more televisits, and bringing on professionals. Again, how do we get the resources to the people that need it when they need it? And that's some of the things that we're working on. That's some things we need to work on as communities as well as mental health professionals, so that way the patients get what they need when they need it. All right, thank you very much. Yes, ma'am.
My question is in regards to telehealth. So in the wake of COVID, we've suffered a great deal with a break in our community with technology. It's a big technology gap, as we've seen with the education. So as you guys are picking up on the telehealth, how are you guys helping in the community to address that technology gap? Are you guys doing any community events to kind of help people to learn how to sign into the portal? Because a lot of the seniors may be depending on telehealth, but do they actually know how to work it and be able to take advantage of it?
It's a great question. So I'm blessed to be working at a place. So I have the title of Chief Medical Officer. It's a fancy title, which really means that nobody else wanted the job. But I took it on, and I took on the responsibility, and part of that role is to come up with what are some of the barriers. And we constantly communicate with our patients and say, what are some of the barriers you're having based off of the barriers they give us, and then we quantify them and we qualify them, and then we go back and we prioritize them. We say, okay, what do we need to work on next? And then we bring on either teammates or we develop things so that we can do just that. We have a community relations person. He's actually there, Demetrius Anderson, so he's taping us right now. But so depending on what we see, then what we would do within the community and how we would do certain events or training or teaching at the location or abroad. We have a tool or technology tool, an educational piece. It's actually used from a lot of universities. It's called Moodle. We're putting together a lot of those educational pieces too, so that patients will have access to them online as well. But to your point, some patients, they don't have the ability to go online, and that's why we also have what we call an open access system at our location, meaning that we have so many slots a day for even same-day appointments so we can get the patients in if there's a technology gap. You're welcome.
What the new trend is or not. So with that being said, if they're taking the classes that they need to take every year for the trend that's happening now, okay, then they should be able to go back and deliver it to the patient.
Correct.
Maybe.
Right. So you are correct in the fact that most licensed professionals have to do what they call continuing educational units, or CMEs. and based off of the state that you're in or the profession that you're in. So we have to hold a certain amount of credits every year to show the state that we are maintaining our license. But we get to choose. So, and every professional, or every, I should say, primary care specialist, when they're choosing, they have to maintain a 50 CEUs per year in their specialty. So I hold 2 different specialties, so I have to hold 100 per year and then submit those. But you get to choose which ones they are. And if my, I guess my passion was more towards cardiology, then I would probably pick more of that. If it's more towards women's health, I would pick probably more to that. And there is no like forced, like, hey, you have to take out of your 50, 10 towards mental health, for example. That's a good point, and it's something that potentially, again, you know, we have politicians here who could potentially make some headway with that, so why not? Yes, ma'am.
And if that could be the last question, I'm sorry, we do need to wrap up because the breakout session instructors are waiting. So I'm not sure who. We'll bring the mic to you. Well, she's going to ask her last question.
Thank you.
My question is dealing with the neuroscience.
Yeah.
When you indicated that we have 5 to 10 different chemicals in the body, my concern is about the type of medication that I'll say the residents are receiving. In other words, the data, what is the percentage of those different types of chemicals in the body? So if you're collecting the data on that, how would you then prescribe the medication based on if there's a deficiency of that chemical in the body? Because what I'm seeing is an over-medication, and everybody is either getting Abilify, Risperdal. So how do you take that data to prescribe the most appropriate medicine for that person?
So that's like an hour talk.
Oh, sorry.
It is a great question, and I'll try to wrap this up, Susan, real quickly. But it's a great question that leads into a conundrum we have in healthcare, in the neurosciences in general. So we've come a long way in terms of being able to diagnose things, right? So we have great technology and Moore's Law, where technology doubles every 18 months. So those who don't know, so yeah, that's why our iPhones become obsolete, and well, that because also Apple makes a lot of money from the new iPhone. But the technology has been enhanced, and it's a great thing. It's a godsend for us to be able to use this technology. But one thing we don't have from the neuroscience component is the ability to really measure the active chemicals in the brain to be able to adjust the medications. It is a true trial, feedback loop that we have to go through with that. Because, you know, there's functional MRIs, and we use them. So my son has seizure disorder, and we use it on him so we can be able to see what part of the brain is not functioning properly, which one's spiking, and then yes, we use certain medications to see, and then we can come back with a functional MRI and see, did we guess right? You know, and then of course then we use his seizures to see, yep, we guessed right or wrong. But that's not helpful when it comes down to those types of chemicals in the brain, because it's a synapse. And as I mentioned, in this room, while I was experimenting with you guys and your dopamine level, it changed drastically, right? So while we were talking, your chemicals in your brain had shifted. And if I was to measure it at that point in your blood, it would say it's this much. And then 2 hours later, you're going to be at home watching TV, kind of, and then your chemicals go way down. At what point do we take the labs to say, this is what we should be gauging to adjust the medication? That's why it's so difficult right now. I will tell you that neuroscience is getting better to the point where now there is the ability to drill holes in our heads with lasers. Yes, I said drill holes in our heads with lasers, smaller than the size of a hair follicle, and they can insert little fiber optic wires inside our heads. And in our kids' future, they will be able to do things with their brain through the fiber optics in their brain without the use of devices. So they won't need this to change that. They would be able to think Again, remember the eyes are nerves. They will be able to look at something and change the channel. They will be able to think and then do something on a computer. So, and if you think that's like too futuristic for this talk, so Neuralink, so again, there is a company already out there that is already looking at that. And again, because it is, so yes, conspiracy theorists, and I'm a clinician, so I'm going to look at the data and all that, but conspiracy theorists will say, but then you're going to put these these electrodes in our brain, they're going to be able to control our thoughts and they can read our thoughts. Well, they already know what you're thinking anyway because they have access to your phone. So if you think that that's going to be the issue, you know, let's be real. So, but that will happen in our lifetime. You will start seeing that. So it's going to get to that point where we'll be able to put those things inside the brain and then be able to then read the chemicals real time or the neurons real time, because that's what we're talking about. We're talking about the synaptic electrical activity of the neurons and be able to read it and say, hey, you know what? You're depressed. Or hey, you know what? You're going into Alzheimer's. Hey, you know what? You are going to get into, you're in this anxious mode and it's going to take this to decrease it, right? So and I'll get back, and I know Susan's going to kill me, sorry. And that's why I said this is an hour-long talk in itself in terms of the technology and the future and the advancements and what can be done just with the brain itself. So. Yes. I'll be waiting down here for you. How about that?
Okay, we've come back from the breakout, and I just want to thank everybody. I hope everybody had a good time at their breakout. They learned a lot of information from their breakout, and we want to make sure that you have the information. Again, we are here. It has been a fantastic day. We have had COVID, but you folks have come out and been involved in this, our first mental health workshop since the pandemic. So I just want to, I will give you a clap and thank you so very much for coming out. I also want to thank again Dr. Ivory for allowing us to host our mental health workshop in the Northwest campus of Wayne County Community College, as well as I want to thank Dr. Ahmed for being here, although he had another engagement. But I want to thank him, as well as I want to thank Dr. Andrew McQueen, the campus executive dean, for allowing us to come in and be here. And again, I hope everybody had a good time. I also want to thank Charles, who has been out here to give us all the media that we needed. He's been here, and I just want to thank him. And again, let me repeat it. I'm going to look at my list here because I don't want to miss any names. I want to thank, and I'm still going to say it, Dr. Andrew Johnson from the Detroit Recovery. I want to thank Courtney Coco Mathis for her presentation. I want to thank our Congresswoman who actually got off the plane coming from Washington and came here, straight here from the airport. I can't thank her enough. Like I said, I admire the woman so much. She is my hero, and I just want to thank her so very much for taking the time to come out here. And then Dr. Greg Neyman. I know I'm gonna have to get me some of them electrolytes and so I can get going, because I want to be able to look at things and turn it off, and I don't have to do everything. So we definitely gonna have him here at our next presentation, and I just wanted to thank him so very much for being here. And then in our breakout, Aisha Cunningham, thank you so very much. Cherie Ayers, thank you so very much. Meg Watt, Rihanna Pitts. I just can't thank everyone for coming and taking out their Saturday and being here. And then again, I just can't thank you, because you could have been anywhere else, but you took it upon yourself to learn about, because again, as I keep saying, mental health, ladies and gentlemen, is life. And it is something that occurs. You heard what Congresswoman Lawrence stated. You heard what others have stated, how our everyday lives affect how we think and how we react to things. So again, I have to thank you for coming out, because it is you that is going to spread the information to others, and that we have more people coming out with their interests and with their issues. And one of the things I wanted to also say is, it's all right. It's okay. Because if you have an issue, it's all right to talk about it. Because each of us have an issue, and there might be something that somebody else had, and then you learn, oh, I'm not the only one. So that's what these are about, for us coming together. So again, I cannot thank you enough for this. We are going to, but depending on the variant and where we are with COVID, again, we'll probably have another one, probably around March. I will be checking with Ms. Susan Gardner to make sure, as well as our health department, because we want to see how this all comes out. So again, thank you so very much. Again, as your councilman, Roy McCalister Jr., I want to always be here for you, and whatever the issues are, it's about quality of life and how we live. Thank you so very much, and God bless you.